The bread oven it dawned gray and cold over the old village of Coahuila the day Wakun woke and found the bed empty. His wife's side was icy. Amelia had left in the early morning without a sound. On the table there was a short note, and, in the room next door, 2 children who still slept, knowing nothing. Welcome to Historias Entre Vidas, where every door that closes leaves another half open. Wakun read the note 3 times, then folded it and stayed looking at the wall. Outside, a rooster crowed as if nothing had happened. The note said little. "Forgive me. I can't anymore. Take care of the children better than I knew how." Wakun didn't cry. He sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the cold in his chest to pass. It didn't pass. They had had 2 years of bad luck. He had lost his job at the mine. They had come back to the town, to the old house of his late mother, Doa Conde. May she rest in peace. They ate little and argued more. Amelia went out little by little, like a candle. And one early morning she went out entirely and left. Wakun wasn't a bad man. He was just a tired man who hadn't known how to see in time how much his wife was fading. He reproached himself all that morning. Then he stopped reproaching himself. The children were hungry, and reproach fills no plate. "Pap?" The voice was Consuelo's, his daughter, 7 years old. "Where's my mom?" "She went out early." Wakun lied. "Where to?" "On an errand." The girl looked at him with those eyes that already knew how to read. Behind her appeared Martin, the boy, 4 years old, dragging a blanket. "I'm hungry," said Martin. "I'll make you something in a bit," answered Wakun. There wasn't much to make them. There was half a bag of flour, a little coffee, and 3 eggs. Wakun scrambled what he found and sat them down to eat. He watched them chew in silence. He thought he had no idea how to do that, the business of being father and mother at the same time. The news flew through the town before midday. In small towns, everything is known quickly. By the afternoon, Doa Herminia, Amelia's mother, was already at the door, with her son Rutilio behind her. "We came for the children," said Doa Herminia, without greeting. "What?" Wakun straightened up. "My daughter told us this was going badly. A man alone doesn't raise 2 children. We're taking them with us, for their own good. They're my children. They're blood of my blood, too," she said. "And you don't have a pot to piss in. What are you going to support them with? Air?" Rutilio peered into the interior of the house, measuring everything with his gaze, like one who appraises a ruin. "Listen to my mother, Wakun," said Rutilio. "There's no future here. Better that the children eat warm food at our house." Wakun clenched his teeth. "Eat warm food," he repeated, slowly. "And is that going to take away that their father gave them away?" "No one's talking about giving away," said Doa Herminia. "We're talking about raising." Consuelo had come close to the door. She had heard everything. She tugged at her father's shirt. "Pap," she whispered. "Doesn't Mom love us anymore?" No one answered. The silence grew heavy. Doa Herminia lowered her gaze for the first time. "Think about it," she said at last. "We'll come back in a few days. You have nothing to fight this with, Wakun." They left. Wakun closed the door. He hugged his 2 children against his legs and stayed like that a long while, saying nothing, feeling the ground open beneath him. That night, when the children finally slept, Wakun went through the old house with a candle stub. It was the house where he had been born. For years, no one had cared for it. The adobe walls were cracked, and everything smelled of dust and stopped time. He went out to the back patio. There was his mother's old oven. It was a wood-fired oven of clay, big as a small hut, with the mouth black with soot. Doa Conde had been a baker, the best in the town, according to the old folks. Wakun remembered her taking bread out at dawn, with her apron full of flour. But she had died when he was young, and the oven had spent years cold. Dead. Forgotten under a dry vine. Wakun put his hand on the clay. It was icy. He closed his eyes and, for an instant, he was 8 years old again. He saw his mother in front of that same oven, in the early morning, with the apron white with flour and her hair tied back. He heard her hum softly. He saw her cross herself before putting in the first batch. "The one who gives bread gives life, my son," she would tell him, without turning around. Wakun hadn't understood then what she meant. He was beginning to understand it now. That night, lying on the cold floor next to his children, Wakun realized that his mother's house, which he had always looked at as a ruin and an encumbrance, was in reality the only whole thing he had left in the world, and that perhaps he hadn't come back to it by chance, but because something, without his knowing it yet, was waiting for him among those old walls. "If you could see me now." "Mom," he murmured, "I don't even know how to feed them." He went back inside. He lay down on the floor next to the children's cot and didn't sleep. In the early morning, Consuelo woke and found him with his eyes open. "You're not sleeping, Pap?" she asked. "I'm not sleepy," he lied. "Me neither." The girl sat down beside him. "Is Mom going to come back?" Wakun took his time answering. "I don't know, my girl," he said at last. "Truly, I don't know. And if she doesn't come back, then we'll manage, the three of us. You, your brother, and me. Can you do it alone?" "I'm going to have to be able to." "God willing, I'll be able to." Consuelo leaned against his arm and went back to sleep. Wakun stayed looking at the ceiling. Through the crack of the door came a thread of cold light. He thought of his mother. He thought of when he was a boy and that house smelled of bread. That was a long time ago. Too long. What Wakun didn't know yet was that that forgotten oven still held the way to save all three of them. The next day he went to the town to look for work. He found nothing. He knocked at the closed mine. He knocked at the shop. He knocked at the smithy. Everywhere the same face, the same answer. "There's nothing, Wakun," the shopkeeper told him. "Things are hard for everyone." "Whatever it is," said Wakun. "Hauling sacks, sweeping, whatever comes up, whatever it is, there isn't any." The shopkeeper, anyway, let him have a little lard and beans on credit. "For your mother," he said. "May she rest in peace. I owe her more than one favor." Wakun thanked him. The pity weighed on him more than the sack. On his way back, an old man stopped him in the street. "Are you Doa Conde's son?" he asked. "Yes, sir, I'm Eusebio. I knew your mother all my life." The old man looked at him with affection. What a woman. No one matched her poke bread. I still dream of it. "I don't even know how to make a tortilla, Don Eusebio," said Wakun. "A pity," sighed the old man. "That oven fed half the town." Wakun went on his way, but the words stayed stuck in him. That oven fed half the town. That afternoon he didn't go looking for more work. He went back to the patio. He stayed looking at the oven a good while. "What are you doing, Pap?" asked Consuelo. "I don't know," he said. "Thinking about what?" "About your grandmother Conde. Did you know she made bread?" "No, right here, in this oven." Consuelo looked at the oven with new eyes. "Do you know how to make bread?" she asked. "No," admitted Wakun. "But maybe I'll learn." He started that same afternoon. He cleaned the mouth of the oven, pulled out the dry vine, and swept the old ashes. Martin passed him the small sticks, and Consuelo swept beside him. For the first time in days, the three of them did something together. "Why is it so black inside?" asked Martin, peering in. "From the smoke of many years," said Wakun. "Your grandmother lit this oven every early morning. Every one? Every one. Rain or thunder, and she didn't get tired? Surely she did. But she lit it anyway. And why if she got tired? Asked Consuelo, without stopping sweeping. Wakun stopped. He thought about it. Because that's what they ate from, he said, and because she liked to see people happy with her bread. They worked until the sun went down. The oven was left clean inside, the mouth cleared, the vine torn out. It wasn't much yet. But it no longer looked like a dead shell. It looked like something that could light up again. That night they had the beans bought on credit, the three of them on the patio step, in front of the clean oven. It wasn't much. But Consuelo said they tasted good, and Martin had a second plate. Wakun thought it had been a long time since he'd seen them eat so contentedly. Maybe what they lacked wasn't only food. It was having something ahead of them again. "It's going to look nice," said Martin. "It's going to be warm," corrected Wakun, and the boy laughed. Inside the house, on a high shelf, Wakun found things of his mother's, an image of the Virgin, an old grinding stone, and a cotton apron, worn, still with stains of flour from 20 years ago. He took it down slowly. It barely smelled of something sweet, or perhaps it was his memory that smelled it. "It was your grandmother's," he told Consuelo. "Put it on," said the girl. Wakun tied on the apron. It was small on him. He didn't care. That afternoon, Don Eusebio passed along the street and peered into the patio. "Are you cleaning your mother's oven?" he asked, surprised. "I'm trying to," said Wakun. "And are you going to make bread in it?" "If I learn. I don't have a single recipe, Don Eusebio." The old man stayed thinking. "Your mother wrote everything down," he said. "Everything, even the pesos of the errands. Look well for it. A woman like that doesn't take her secrets to the grave without leaving a copy." Wakun didn't answer, but that night the old man's words went around in his head. That night the children slept peacefully for the first time. Wakun stayed in front of the clean oven, not knowing where to start. He knew how to light it, yes, but he didn't know what to put in it. He had no recipes. He had no idea. He had an oven and nothing more. For a moment, fear bent him over. He sat on the step with his face in his hands. He thought of the note. He thought of Doa Herminia. He thought that maybe they were right, that a man alone couldn't, that perhaps the best thing for the children was to let them go. But then he heard, inside, the laughter of Martin asleep, dreaming something good, and the idea left him all at once. He wiped his face. He straightened up. He wasn't going to hand over his children, not while he had breath left. "I need you to lend me a hand, Mom," he said in a low voice. "Wherever you are." The next morning, while he was moving some old cans piled up next to the oven, one fell and rolled across the ground. It was a cookie tin, rusted and dented. He picked it up and it was heavy, though there were no cookies inside. At the bottom of that rusted tin was a notebook that was going to change everything. Wakun took it out carefully. It was an old notebook, with yellow pages tied with a thread. He opened it, and he recognized, all at once, his mother's handwriting. They were her recipes. All of them. The poke bread, the conchas, the semitas, the pan de muerto, the quantities, the times, the secrets. Page after page, in Doa Kandi's cramped handwriting, 40 years of the oven were written. Wakun's hands trembled. He turned to the first page. There, above everything, his mother had written a single line, like a heading, like a piece of advice. "Bread isn't flour and water. It's what's left when there's nothing left." Wakun stayed looking at that phrase a long while. Then he closed his eyes. He turned the pages slowly, like one who caresses. In the margins, his mother had left small notes. "This is Wakun's favorite," it said next to the recipe for the conchas. Wakun's throat closed. He didn't know she had written it down. He didn't know so many things. Consuelo peered in. "What's that, Pap?" "Your grandmother's notebook," he said. "Here's how she made the bread." "And are you going to make it?" "I'm going to try. And if it doesn't come out right, I try again, until it comes out right." "Thank you," he whispered. "God willing, I'm going to try." That same afternoon he bought, on credit, a sack of cheap flour. He lit the oven for the first time in 20 years. The firewood caught. The clay began to heat. A sweet smoke rose to the gray sky of Coahuila, and the warmth was felt all over the patio. "It smells nice," said Consuelo. "There's no bread yet," said Joaquin. "But it smells like there's going to be." The first attempt was a disaster. The bread came out hard as a stone. The second, burnt. Joaquin cursed under his breath. Martin laughed. "Charcoal," said the boy, pointing at the black bread. "Charcoal," admitted Joaquin. "Your grandmother would be laughing at me." "Do you know what you're doing, Pap?" asked Consuelo. "Worried no," he said, with a half smile. "But each time I know a little more." He went back to the notebook. He read the recipe a fourth time. He understood that the oven had to be at its point, neither too lively nor too dead. He waited for the embers. He put his hand in to feel the heat, the way he had seen his mother do. And he knew, at last, that it was the moment. Joaquin went back to the notebook. He read again. He measured better. He waited for the embers at their point. Martin fell asleep on a sack, and Consuelo held out awake, keeping watch. On the third try, it came out. Out came a golden bread, round and fragrant, exactly like the one he remembered from childhood, and when he broke it the steam rose in the cold air. He gave a piece to each child. "It's good, Pap," shouted Martin, with his mouth full. "It's good," repeated Consuelo, and for the first time in many days, she smiled for real. Joaquin tasted his. It tasted of his mother. It tasted of his childhood. It tasted like maybe, just maybe, not everything was lost. That night he slept through for the first time since Amelia had left, with his mother's notebook on his chest and the smell of bread still stuck on his hands. He dreamed good things, though on waking he didn't remember which, and he understood that the tiredness of work was different from the tiredness of grief, because one carries hope inside, and the other carries nothing. He took a basket to the town the next morning. He didn't know if anyone would buy from him. He stood in the plaza with his mother's apron on, dying of embarrassment. The first to come close was Don Eusebio. "Let's see," said the old man. He smelled the bread. He took a bite, and he went still. "Joaquin, what? This is your mother's bread. It's exact." The old man's eyes watered. "I thought I was going to die without tasting it again." Don Eusebio bought the whole basket, and he told everyone he came across. By midday, there were people asking about the bread of the late Doa Conde, which had come back, they said, as if by a miracle. Joaquin sold everything he took, and the little he sold that morning was more than he'd had in weeks. He came back home with coins in his pocket and the children running at his side. "Tomorrow do we make more?" asked Consuelo. "Tomorrow we make more," said Joaquin. And the day after, and the next. What neither Joaquin nor the children knew was that, a few streets away, Doa Herminia had already spoken with a lawyer and would soon come back to carry out her threat. They came back a week later. Doa Herminia and Rutilio, this time with a man in a jacket who said he was from the authorities and with papers in hand. They arrived mid-morning, when the whole patio smelled of freshly baked bread and half a dozen neighbors waited in line at the door. "We came for the children," announced Doa Herminia. The murmur of the line went quiet. "They're not going anywhere," said Wakun. Calm. He wiped his hands on the apron. "There's an arrangement," intervened the man in the jacket. "The maternal family considers that the father cannot provide. If he doesn't demonstrate the contrary, the minors, that he can't provide?" Don Eusebio butted in, indignant. "This man is feeding half the town again. Come see the line." "It's true," said a woman from the line. "My family hadn't eaten warm bread in months." "And he pays cash for what's let to him on credit," added another. "I've seen it." The man in the jacket cleared his throat, uncomfortable. He looked at his papers. This wasn't turning out the way they had told him. "I only came to verify the situation of the home," he said, "and the situation seems stable." "More than stable," said Don Eusebio. "It's alive again." Doa Herminia looked at the line of neighbors. She looked at the smoke of the oven. She looked at the coins on the table. "This isn't going to last," she said, but her voice no longer sounded sure. "Maybe not," said Wakun. "But while it lasts, I'm going to give it everything. And if it doesn't last, I start over again. That's what a father does." "You're a starving wretch," spat Rutilio. "Maybe so." Wakun didn't raise his voice. "But these children aren't going anywhere. Their mother failed them. Their father, no." The patio went silent. Consuelo ran and hugged her father's leg. Martin did the same on the other side. "I don't want to go, Grandma," said Consuelo, with a little but firm voice. "I want to stay with my pap. Here it smells of bread." Doa Herminia stayed looking at her granddaughter. Something broke in her face. She lowered the papers. She looked around her at the neighbors who were watching her and understood, all at once, what role she was playing in front of the whole town. "Let's go, Rutilio," she said in a low voice. "But Mother, we're going." Rutilio stayed a second longer, looking at the lit oven, the bread, the line of people. He seemed about to say something. He said nothing. He lowered his head and followed his mother. Before leaving, Doa Herminia stopped next to Consuelo. She put a hand on her head, clumsy, like one who doesn't know how to caress. "Take care, child," she said, with a broken voice. "Yes, Grandma," answered Consuelo. "Come buy bread whenever you want." The old woman couldn't answer. She left quickly, so they wouldn't see her cry. They left without the children. The man in the jacket put away his papers, uncomfortable, and left after them. The neighbors, slowly, formed back into the line, pretending they hadn't seen anything, but greeting Wakun differently, with a kind of new respect. Doa Herminia never brought up the subject again. A house isn't sustained by the one who leaves, but by the one who stays and lights the fire each morning. Wakun breathed. His hands trembled a little. He went back to the oven. He had bread to take out. By the time winter came, the old house of Doa Conde had become a bakery again. Wakun had the mouth of the oven painted. He put a long table in the corridor. Each early morning, long before the sun rose, he lit the firewood, and the patio filled with the smell of dough and caf de olla. The neighbors already knew that at a certain hour the bread came out, and the line began in the darkness, all with their mug and their coin, chatting under the stars while they waited. Wakun blessed the first batch in a low voice, the way he had seen his mother do, giving thanks to God for the flour and for the new day. Then he handed it out. To the one who didn't have enough, he let it on credit, and to the one who plainly had nothing, he gave it. "Why isn't that one charged for, Pap?" asked Martin one morning. "Because that one is for the one who has nothing," said Wakun. "Your grandmother said that the house that shares its bread never runs out of it." Consuelo learned to make the conchas. Martin, who was already 5, passed the firewood to his father like a serious assistant. In the afternoons, the 3 of them sat on the step to count the day's coins, and almost always there was enough. And sometimes there was even extra. Doa Conde's apron hung from a nail next to the oven, where everyone could see it. People began to call the place Doa Conde's bakery, though the deceased had been 20 years underground. It didn't bother Wakun. He liked that his mother kept feeding the town through his hands. One night, Consuelo asked him, "Pap, do you think Mom knows we're okay?" Wakun thought about it. "I don't know, my girl," he said. "But if she knows, she must be at peace. She wanted us to be okay. She wrote it in her note. I miss her sometimes. Me too. It's okay to miss her. And it's okay to be okay at the same time." With time, the patio of the old house became the heart of the town again, just like in Doa Conde's years, when people got up early not only for the bread, but for the pleasure of waiting for it together in the warm darkness of the oven. Wakun never became rich again, because that was never what it was about. But he never lacked what to fill 2 plates with, or what to light the fire with each dawn. One afternoon, Don Eusebio came for his usual bread and stayed looking at the patio full of life. "Your mother would be happy," said the old man. "I hope so," answered Wakun. "You know what I think?" Don Eusebio smiled. "That she left that notebook there on purpose. She knew that someday you were going to need it." Wakun looked at the lit oven and at his 2 children floured from head to toe, laughing, "Maybe," he said. "Maybe so. Sometimes the true home is not the one you have, but the one you dare to build up again with your own hands, when you already believed you had lost everything." Joaquin lost his wife and almost lost his children. But in a cold and forgotten oven, in the handwriting of a dead mother, he found not only a trade, but the way to stay on his feet. And he learned that bread, like love, isn't flour and water. It's what's left, and what's shared, when there was nothing left. Do you believe that the worst moments can be the beginning of something better? If this story touched something in your heart, leave me your comment and tell me from which part of Mexico or the world you're joining us. Give this story a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss any story. And share it with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to start over. Heartfelt thanks for accompanying this story to the end. Until the next story. That winter early morning, while he took out the first batch and the smell of warm bread rose all over the patio and slipped into the sleeping houses of the town, Wakun knew, without needing to say it, that this was no longer an empty house, but a home that was breathing again.